welcome to Investors Guide. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Faye D'Souza. We have a very special show lined up for you this week, and this week is all about the NPS, or the National Pension System. Now, after the government announced that additional tax benefit, which will start in this year, the 1st of April onwards, we got a lot of questions from you about the NPS. How does it work? How do you get started? Should you or should you not open an account? Well, we're going to try and answer all of those questions on the show right now. And if you have more questions that you feel weren't answered, you can write to us. Our email ID is at the bottom of your screen. Of course, I'm going to bring in Narendra Kumar, who has been looking very closely at the NPS and where it should fit in to all our portfolios. But before we ask him how we should get started, here's a quick look at the product itself and how it works.
Before you invest in the NPS, you must understand how it works. The NPS is a pension product regulated by the Pension Fund Regulatory and Development Authority, or PFRDA, especially designed to inculcate the habit of saving for your retirement. In this pension product, the contribution is voluntary and it offers hassle-free portability across jobs and locations, unlike other pension products in India. The NPS offers two types of accounts, the Tier 1 and the Tier 2 account. The Tier 1 account is the primary pension account, which means the money you invest is locked in until you turn 60. The Tier 1 account requires a minimum contribution of 500 rupees. The Tier 2 account is an add-on savings account. The investments made in this account can be withdrawn at any time, but you won't receive any tax breaks. Tier 2 can be opened with a minimum contribution of 1000 rupees. The NPS allows you to choose your fund manager from 6 different public and private asset management companies. It also allows you to choose your asset allocation by picking the active option.
Let's say he puts 50% in equity, he puts 20% in G-Secs and he puts 30% in debt. Now, this entitles him or gives him the ability to earn a return which can give him 200 to 400 basis points above inflation, which is not what can be said if one was to allocate his entire corpus only to debt.
Alternatively, you can choose the auto option that depends on your age.
So it starts with the assumptions that during your earlier ages you can take more risks, and which will hopefully get you better returns, because equity over a longer period of time has historically known to give much superior returns to debt. So you start with a much higher equity pool where you're investing 50% of your investments there, and it automatically reduces it to 10%.
The NPS also offers tax swaps for investors apart from basic deduction of 1.5 lakh rupees.
Employer's contribution has got an additional advantage of 10% of basic plus DA, and that means 1,50,000 ATC, 50,000 individual's own contribution under ATCC-D, and 10% of basic plus DA. If the employer contributes on behalf of employee, that is again an additional advantage, and that is coming under ATCC-D2.
If your employer opens an NPS account for you, the PRAN number will be migrated from a corporate account to an individual account if there is a job switch. And finally, an exit claim ID is generated 6 months before you turn 60. The ID is also generated for premature exits and death cases. And in case of demise, the money will be transferred to the nominee.
All right, so that's the National Pension System. Narendra, there's a lot of confusion, and this is a very basic question about where the NPS should fit into our portfolios. There are viewers who are asking us whether it's an alternative, for example, to the EPF, or whether it's an alternative to an ELSS or the PF. Really, for those of us who've been investing so far in all of these things, we have a PF deduction, we have an ELSS contribution, we have mutual fund contributions. Where does the NPS really fit in?
One just has to look at it very objectively. It is not a matter of fitting it in. It's basically appreciating that what it stands for and what it delivers you compared to EPF or your traditional pension fund, the Provident fund for older employees. For private sector employees, this year budget has made it optional that they can choose whether to move their money into NPS or the Provident fund or the Employee Provident fund. NPS is a more transparent, it is more democratic in sense that it is giving investors or savers a choice how they want their money to be managed, at what level they want to keep their asset allocation, Whereas EPF is, something which basically is an underwriting, that this is this much of pension and this much of return. And so far we have seen, right now it is 8.75%. But I've visualized that, over a long period of time, the return that can be derived from NPS, and the core objective of both the plans should be maximizing your accumulation for your retirement. And on that front, NPS actually stacks up very well.
But we have a question that's come in, Narendra, in a follow-up to what you just said. And this one's coming from a viewer called Rupesh, who writes in saying you can't really compare EPF and NPS because EPF provides disability pension if that happens to an employee during service. After 10 years of service, there is an assured minimum pension regardless of, whether contributions are made on time. He's saying, why is the NPS being pushed by the government right now when we already have a system like the EPF? But the truth is that even if I have a PF deduction, and I'm very fond of it, like Rupesh does seem to be, it makes sense to add the NPS as an add-on 50,000 rupees contribution, doesn't it?
The core objective for majority of the savers, the objective of a Provident fund or your NPS is to accumulate your savings in a manner which is optimal, which will maximize your return in the best possible fashion. And on that front, NPS stacks up very nicely. If you are looking for, the add-on benefit of disability insurance, or, something happens to you and a term cover, then maybe, yes, EPF, Employee Provident Fund, mixes it all up, and in a very nominal way. They are not of meaningful value. When I look at the worth of those underwriting or the risk coverage added to EPF, it may not be very sizable. Maybe a small nominal amount going towards disability insurance or a term cover or accidental insurance will get you that coverage.
But Narendra, I want you to take us through the choices one by one. Now, if I open an NPS account, my first choice is, do I just want a Tier 1 account, or do I want Tier 1 and Tier 2? The next choice that I have to make is the asset allocation. I decide whether I want a portion of equity, whether I only want government securities, or I want debt. And the third choice then is the fund manager that I need to pick. So let's go choice by choice. The first one, given where the NPS is in terms of being user-friendly, in terms of being efficient, should we just be opening the Tier 1 account this year, or does it make sense to also have a Tier 2 account at this point?
No, I don't see a great logic for Tier 2 account, though looking at the performance of the different plans of Tier 2 actually makes me think that they are beating the mutual fund by a wide margin. And I don't see any difference in the Tier 2 accounts of the government securities, government bond fund plans and the corporate bond plans. There's absolutely no difference, because if you invest in the Tier 2 account, the tax treatment is virtually the same as mutual fund.
All right, so the next question then, Narendra, is should we pick an active, allocation, or should we pick the passive allocation? So, Narendra, is going by our age the best way to do it?
No, I think, the active plan is fairly conservative. I would say that in India, where the inflation rate is so high, the active plan actually diverts, moves a substantial part of your money well ahead of, when you need it into fixed income. So I would say that, investors should have some simple strategy till you are actually 40 and you are still 20 years away from your retirement. You have 50% maximum, the maximum permitted equity allocation can be 50%, which to my understanding is still very conservative. So have your equity allocation till the age of 40 or 45, and then start moving a small part of it into fixed income.
And finally, of course, Narendra, there's the question of the fund manager. Now, we have 6 options to choose from, and there are, of course, as you can see on our screen, a couple of the top options that have actually outperformed the rest of them. That's HDFC and ICICI. That's on your screen right now. Since we're looking not just at 2 years or 3 years, it's an account that's going to be active until we hit the age of 60. How should we pick a fund manager? And once we've made that choice, how should we constantly track it to make sure that choice continues to stay valid?
Don't bother much, because, if you look at the range of return even offered by various plans in the equity segment, the difference is not much. So I would not attribute, choose the one based on, recent performance. Because when I look at the underlying variables, they are virtually constant. And, all these pension plans or their operating framework, particularly in the equity segment, is very narrow. Every fund has to invest in the stock, their stock universe is just Nifty and Sensex stocks.
So here's the advice you're getting right now. It does make sense to open an NPS account right now, this year, in fact, so you can take advantage of that tax benefit. So after the 1st of April, make sure you open an account. Do a Tier 1 account. There isn't too much merit right now in doing a Tier 2 account, but we'll keep an eye on those returns because they do seem fairly impressive. Narendra there is saying make sure you pick the active allocation, so you choose your equity allocation, go as high as possible. You know, up till the age of 40 at least, equity allocation allowed is 50%, so make sure you pick that highest option. And there isn't too much picking or choosing between the various fund managers, so pick the name that you're comfortable with. Narendra, I have a question for you that's come in from one of our viewers. Nidhi Anand has written in. She says there's an additional benefit of 50,000 rupees over and above the 1.5 lakh rupees under Section 80C. She says there's also a 10% additional benefit. What exactly happens to the taxes? She's not really clear about how the taxes will get calculated at this point. So obviously, she's confused about the fact that everything has been under that bracket of Section 80C up till now. This is a completely different bucket altogether. So how will this impact her tax calculations for the year, Narendra?
Things happen to NPS in this budget. One is that the Section 80C, the limit was revised to 1.5 lakh rupees, and there were many eligible investments in that. But the limit for NPS remained at 1 lakh rupee. So that has been revised to 1.5 lakh rupees. So that is one. Now you can make additional 50,000 rupee investment in NPS and get that will also be deducted from your income for computing taxes. Then the third thing that has happened is you have employee provident fund contribution. In the savers will be at employees will be at choice, will be able to choose to move their money to NPS, and we have to wait for the operating procedure for it to actualize.
Welcome back. You're watching Investors Guide in ET now. Thank you for staying with us. Narendra Kumar is with us as well. Narendra, we have a question from Hitendra Singh who's written in. He says, the NPS is a wonderful investment tool, but he's not been able to find a single way to invest in the product. He says even the bank employees in the designated branches don't know how to get this started. He wants to know how he should go about opening an NPS account. And now for Hitendra's benefit and for everybody else who's watching, we've put together a quick report on the process of starting an NPS scheme. Take a look.
11.5 crore.
The FM may have given the NPS a tax incentive in the budget, but the process to open an account might need a push in efficiency as well. If you want to open an account, you have to first find a point of purchase or a POP. The list includes several private and public service banks. You can walk into one of the branches, fill up the prescribed form and submit the necessary KYC documents, which include identity proof, address proof, date of birth proof and 2 color photographs. You will be assigned a PRAN number and you can begin investing. If you prefer the online system, log into any of the portals that offers the service and click Register Now and fill in details like your name, email address, mobile number and confirm your password and verify your email ID. You then need to go to My Page and click on Online NPS and it will redirect you to the existing subscriber page. You then select New Subscriber, Register Now. You will be redirected to the NPS page. Clicking on Register will upload the form. You will need to fill in details like your name, gender, date of birth, address, etc. To proceed, you need to click on Save and Proceed. The next step takes you to the bank details. You will need to fill in the account number, bank name, address, the IFSC code and the bank PIN code. The details of your nominee will also be needed. Now choose a date, the frequency and the amount you wish to contribute. Most importantly, you have to choose the time you would like to continue to hold the account. Then you have an option to choose your fund manager and select your asset allocation. And finally, clicking on Submit Request will take you to Print page. Unfortunately, there is no direct way to submit your request online. You have to send the signed form to the distributor. The registration will approximately cost you 470 rupees and the turnaround time will be 15 to 20 days. A permanent retirement account will be generated and you will be intimated via email or SMS. You can check the status by accessing the CRA website. Also, if you must address a grievance, you call the call center or track it on the CRA website via your PRAN number. You can also contact your distributor or POP SP.
So that's the process on paper, Narendra. Basically, this is what the PFRDA tells us you have to do in order to open an account. But as we know, it's never as simple as that. It does seem to have a lot of roadblocks in terms of just opening an account. And there isn't enough education. I mean, forget about the investor knowing how this works. Even the tellers in the banks don't know how this works. So it's not going to be as easy as it seems in that report, is it?
No, it's not that easy. And particularly, the design of the NPS is such that, nobody gets an incentive to mobilize the money or open an account. That is perhaps the reason. That is at the heart of it, why it is not that easy and why you will not find anybody holding your hand to open an NPS account.
In fact, Narendra, conversations that I have had with various stakeholders in those fund management companies who are managing NPS accounts say that they are in conversation with the PFRDA to simplify the process, to create ease of access to the NPS, and of course to educate both the the seller and the buyer of the product. So, like most other government schemes, do you believe that over a period of time the NPS will achieve a certain level of efficiency that will make it easier for us to use it?
Yeah, I think the process needs to be simplified. One is that the form itself is quite intimidating. If it is reduced to one or at most one page, that will simplify things, because what you need, you need some form of identification, your name, address and basic things, and after that, you just need to give your instruction where you want your money to be.
But then there's a slightly personal question. Have you opened an NPS account yourself yet?
I'm just about to open one. So far, I have failed in easily open the NPS account in the past, and I didn't see a reason, because when it comes to Section 80C, it was not my top priority, and it is still not a top priority. If I have to choose between ELSS and NPS as my ATC, in my endeavor to avail ATC, it will not be NPS. It will be the tax saving fund.
All right, and since that has changed now, and we have a new bracket of ATCCD, which involves the NPS, both Narendra and I are going to attempt over the next couple of weeks to open NPS accounts ourselves, and we will give you reviews of how we fared and how, easy or difficult that system is. And of course, you can then learn from our experience. I'm going to slip in one more question, Narendra. Shamik Sharma has written in. He would like to open an account in the NPS after the government has given that push, but he has doubts about taxation. He says, if I'm going to be taxed at the end of the tenure, which we know it's EET right now, it's not EEE, which basically means that when the money comes out at the other end, you have to forcibly put some of it in an annuity, which is not a great and efficient product, plus you have to pay tax on it. And he says not all employers are offering it to their employees right now. What should he do at this point? What can he do to save tax, especially in the 10 or 20% bracket? So there are two questions here. One is, do you believe NPS will actually at some point become EEE? And secondly, for a lot of the private employees where the company runs its own EPFO trust, it is up to that trust to really make the NPS available to those employees, isn't it?
Yes, NPS is EET, but that doesn't mean that all your accumulation will be taxed. The reason being, 40% money going into annuity and the income derived from annuity will be taxable. So the money, your accumulation going to buying annuity is not taxable. The other thing which is not clarified yet, but I am confident based on logical grounds that why it should be, is that your accumulation over a period of time will be indexed. It is EET, but your gains will be indexed, and post indexation I don't see any reason why it should not be indexed, because it is not a security of the usual kind. Then comes the issue of, will it become EEE? Will it be yes, for a substantial part it should become EEE, because that is the case of EPF as well as public provident fund. You make your allocate, you accumulate and you take your money out, and even the returns from PPF is tax free.
Welcome back. You're watching Investors Guide on ET Now. I'm Faye D'Souza, and my mutual fund, and who I'm now calling my NPS expert, is on the line in Delhi. Narendra, thank you so much for staying with us. We have two questions in this segment, so I'm going to try and get through both of them because we're running out of time. Dinesh has written in. He wants to know why the Tier 2 account of the NPS is not eligible for a tax deduction. And Digant Mohanty also wants clarification on the tax exemptions on individual investments made into NPS. So it's true that while Tier 1 is completely tax deductible up to 50,000 rupees under Section 80CCD, and up to 1.5 lakh rupees under Section 80C, the Tier 2 account will not have any tax deduction at all. Would you help us figure out why?
No, simply because your tier 1 account, all your contribution in tier 1 account stays in the tier 1 account. You can't take it out till you attain the age of 60. Your tier 2 account is like any other savings bank account. You can put your money anytime and you can take your money back anytime. Because there is absolutely, it is, tier 2 is nothing but, a parking ground into an equity fund or a government securities fund or a corporate bond fund, which you can take out anytime, and it is not necessarily or targeted towards retirement. So there is absolutely no tax break. It is just an add-on for savers to save their short-term money as well once you open your NPS account. So that is why there is no tax break on that.
And Narendra, the tier 1 account, just for one last clarification, because we still have questions that have come in on the tier 1 account. So right now, if I can make a maximum of up to 2 lakh rupees investment in the NPS, and all of it would be tax deductible, is that correct?
No other investment or eligible expense will be there for your Section 80C. You can make 2 lakh rupees investment, and this will be deducted from your income.
That's as much information about the NPS as we can squeeze into one episode of Investor's Guide. But if you have more questions, or you feel your questions have not been answered, feel free to get in touch with us on the email ID at the bottom of your screen. You find a copy of the show on our Facebook page, and you can reach both of us on Twitter. Narendra, thank you so much for spending time with us this week and answering our questions. We might have to do another entire show on the NPS, depending on the queries that do come in. But for now, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you so much for watching.